I'm going to give a quick recap about who we are and what our business model is before we jump into some more recent updates. All right, so our business model, we'll buy a building, we'll renovate it, lease it, and manage it. So we have a real long-term horizon for getting back a return on our investment, and it means we're really committed to doing we hope quality work and work that will last. And we are from Columbia, Missouri, but we love Ely, Minnesota. Why Ely, Minnesota? So I've been coming up here since I was a very young kid, and every summer we'd visit my godparents who are in the back there. And I worked up here one summer at Paragus, and I have a great love of Ely, and as if I couldn't love Ely anymore, I did find my fiance up here. So she's a local girl, and we're going to get married next summer. So the other thing that I like to talk about when I talk about Ely and why we felt like Ely was a great place to do some projects is because it has a really strong sense of place. Great social opportunities like the folk school and Tuesday Group and Rotary and so much character. You know, how many towns do you get to drive to the gas station in the middle of February and see a guy with 8 sled dogs in the back of a pickup? So that's what I mean when I talk about the sense of place. We also, one of the things that our company values is history. And Ely has so much history, being kind of a frontier town where they found iron and did a lot of logging, and you have tourism and so many interesting cultures that have settled here. So there's a lot to draw from when we're doing our projects. One example of how we try to highlight the history of the buildings. In this case, this was a mural on the wall of the old James Drug Store where David has potluck. So if you can see in the small corner of the back here, it says "Makes Best Bread." We did a renovation on this a few years ago, and we found the old ghosts painted sign on the siding there, and now it hangs in crapola. So here's a collage of some projects that we've worked on over the last 5 years or so. I think there's 9 in total: Insula, Northern Grounds, State Cedar, Potluck, and Crapola, and the Healthy Families Chiropractic in the middle there is a newer business that's opened. The Folk School, of course, Heavy Metal Sports and Cats Billiards. The Salerno building, which houses the second screen of the State Theater. The AFU building, which houses ECR and Range Mental Health. And the old Pizza Hut, which will soon become a Domino's Pizza. So you guys may have seen these before and afters. I think the last time I spoke at the Tuesday Group, we were in the middle of doing the finishing work on the State Theater. So we had already done the outside, and the inside looked like this. So now you guys, who has been to the State Theater? Can anybody tell me what year the State Theater was built? 1933. Close. It's kind of in the middle there. There's a big plaque on the brick building now that the board of directors for the State Theater did a National Register plaque, and it has the dates. And I have a movie pass for the person who gets it right. So we're not moving on until we get this. Who knows it? 36. There we go. 1936, the height of the Art Deco period, the streamlined modern period. The State Theater is run by a nonprofit board of directors, and they do first-run films. They do other live performances. I think Reflections Theater is going to be doing a performance soon. They did the Quilt Maker's Gift to open up the theater. And here's the new concession space. Busy night at the State Theater. And this is the Greenstone Cinema. If you guys haven't been to the second smaller theater yet, I hope you guys make it soon. I was kind of wondering all along how it would fit and feel like a movie theater, but it's a small room, but it really has all the makings of a real cinema feel. A couple upcoming films. There's a Disney movie. It just came out on Friday, and so they got that on Friday. There's showings at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4, 7, and 8. So I think there's 5 movies times every day. 2 o'clock is always a kids film. So if you have kids or grandkids that come to town to visit, 2 o'clock is a good time to go. And then they're doing, the board programs some really interesting things as well, like stages on screens during COVID. That was a newer program that was offered to put different plays on movie theater screens around the country. And in the second floor of the State Theater, this is what we were working on after we did some demolition and right before we started putting things back together. And it's now an Airbnb. So if you guys have family come to town, it's a great spot right in the middle of downtown next to the Pebble Spa and of course the State Theater downstairs. So these 5 buildings are buildings that we have not done too much work on, but those are in our portfolio, and we have plans and dreams and ideas for some that are more fine-tuned and some that are more open. I would like to talk to you guys later on about ideas about what Ely needs, and I've got some ideas to share, but I'm always looking for more ideas. And this group in particular, are great ambassadors for Ely, and I also want to talk about some of the positive things that have happened in the last few years, and maybe you guys can add to that list as well. Give you a little bit of information on these. This is, of course, the train depot, which is where Wilderness Outfitters was for many years. This is the old Ford garage site on Conan Street and Studebaker Garage. The Yakich and the Portage building right on Sheridan. The Tanner Hospital, the infamous castle. And the Pastica building is on Chapman Street next to WELY. So we remember which the next slide is. One of those 5 projects we're going to start doing some work on. And I got another, maybe I'll give away 2 passes for the person who knows where this is. Close. There are like 5 people there. I don't have enough passes. Who said that first, you think? Well, you said it, didn't you? All right. We'll honor that for you. So this is the Yakich building. It's right next to the Portage Bar on Sheridan Street. I think from what I've talked to some folks, some old Elyites, that it was a very popular spot for veterans, especially World War II veterans coming back, and they would have a lot of polka music playing, and it was a 3-2 joint, but in those days, if you walked into the place and you knew who the bartender was, you could probably get something stronger if you wanted. I was at Sam's place yesterday, and I was talking to Sam Zorman, who does some crane operating for us, but he's also started Sam's and sold it to the gun club in Winton. But Sam was telling me how the Yakich bar that's the bar he put in Sam's. So if you guys want to check out the Ely history. So there's the Yakich building. If the name didn't ring a bell, it's right there next to the Portage. The inside is pretty cool. What we like about this, to start it on this, is that it's not a real huge undertaking. It's about 1,000 square feet, and it already has some really neat finishes. You have the old metal walls and ceiling. We had a floor guy come in and do some testing, and there's an old hardwood floor down there that's worth refinishing. So we think that there's a market in town for more little retail shops or services, and we think that if we get this done, and we can get another storefront up and running in Ely. So I want to get to a little bit more of an interactive part of the discussion and talk about what Ely could possibly use as far as new businesses, new services. Going into potluck the other day, there was, you know, it was a busy time of the day and a busy time of the year, but there was a handful of people shopping around, and it just reaffirmed that I think when you have a great products and a great shop, people will come. There's quite a lot of people up here this time of year, and I think more retail for some of the remaining vacant storefronts, although that's declining, would be a good thing for downtown Ely. So who's got ideas for retail?
Women's clothing store for mature women.
A women's clothing store for mature women. I agree. Who else has got some ideas? I know they're out there. Yes. A shoe store, for sure. Especially, you know, JD Mills is closing, so some of the well, you have to see what happens there, but they did have some good footwear there. Yes.
This is not retail, but the grocery store buildings emptying, the community center is still sitting there, etc. And the pickleball club is really growing. They need some indoor, especially winter courts. You could have tennis and handball.
I know Dennis Miller is tuning in on Zoom, so he'll be happy to hear that Elton wants more pickleball courts. Yes.
Directly retail, but above each of those buildings, oftentimes there are apartments like over the State Theater. We need more workforce housing, especially summer workforce housing. Have you thought about using the upstairs of these buildings for that?
I can repeat the question for her. Becky had a great point that it's more apparent than ever this summer that Ely lacks workforce housing, and some of the buildings on Main Street have a second floor, and could that potentially be used for workforce housing? And the answer is possibly. Sometimes there's quite a lot of expenses that go into retrofitting for when you put a lot of people into a building, like sprinkler systems and upgraded water services. And so the cost to put apartments in is a lot more than to put other things on the second level. But it's, you know, the IRRB has funds to help offset some of the bigger investments that you'd put in for infrastructure, and possibly there'd be some help with that. But no question, and it's actually on this list later, some workforce housing to talk about that, and other housing needs as well. But you know, the other thing too with some of the small, I mean, the Tanner Hospital is big, but some of the buildings are so small, every little bit would count. But if the Yakich, for instance, you may only be able to fit in like 2 or 3 units. So I think to really solve the problem, and I know that the city's talked to the chamber about how many beds do we really need for workforce housing, and it's being discussed, but I don't know, you know, if it could be done with one bigger project with multiple units, or everybody get the rest of these vacant buildings on the second floors done up and finished. I think all of those ideas could help towards the end goal. Yes.
From Zoom participants, they say, Mexican food.
Mexican food for sure. You know, we have I think one of the business owners of Ace Hardware purchased a vacant parking lot over there by one of the car dealers in the auto shop, and they're doing a food truck lot. And there's Thai food in Ely, which is, I've been waiting for that for a long time. I love Thai food, so that could be a cool way to get something in Ely that's got some more flavor as well.
Another Zoom suggestion is childcare space.
Childcare space, a big part of getting families and young families up here as well, and filling some of the jobs. So any other retail shops or ideas? I've got a few that I'll share with you guys. Yes. My fiance actually gave me that idea, and so that's on this list, and that's a good insight there. She also mentioned that there's not a good place in Ely to do nails, and I know that can be a profitable business. You know, if you have the right space and the right entrepreneur, that can definitely work. So
Ace Hardware has a nice selection of nails, different. I don't know if you want to compete. Yeah, galvanized.
Well, so Steve Shoney, for all those on Zoom, said Ace Hardware's got a good selection of nails, so maybe we've got that covered. But the one of the things that I think is kind of on the same, or more of a catering to tourism rather than the kids' clothing and nail salons. It would be a business for local people. Would be you know, some of at Minneapolis and Grand Rapids, they have some like Scandinavian inspired home goods, pillows and stuff like that, and some stuff that kind of looks like this. This is the Lake & Co. shop out of Grand Rapids. So I think that could be a fun business that would attract people from the cabins to come downtown, go out to eat, go shopping, go to potluck, go to some of the other stores, and then antique, of course. I think the tower has a couple antique places.
Hey, Tanner, this is Dennis.
Hi, Dennis.
I don't know how many people know this. I think it's out and about now, but the Schultzes from Schultzes Excavating are going to turn the JD Mills into an antique store, and combination antique and as well as run a realty business out of it. Just FYI.
Update from Dennis Miller via Zoom. The old JD Mills is going to be an antique store, according to what Dennis has heard, and it is the Schultzes from the excavating business that bought that building. And there's also putting some of their realty office in there as well. So that's Lori Schultz. That's perfect segue into this next slide.
Just two suggestions from Zoom. One is brewery, distillery type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also they say in the place here, the White Wilderness building, there should be a cafe and a front porch for bikers to make a good stop. And the history museum in there also.
I like all those ideas. The White Wilderness building, which one is that? Oh, Wilderness Outfitters potentially. Yeah, those are all great ideas. A brewery would you know, we have the boathouse, but that sounds like a lot of towns have more than one. So yes, Betty. I agree with that. We miss having Ely Design Works, and Rogers Printing was for blueprints and things like that. But so that would be a great niche to fill. A couple of years ago, I would have said bike shop, and that's now here. And there's been a lot of progress made. You know, the block between Mike's Liquor and Ely Liquor, when we first started to do some work in Ely, there was not a lot on that block. Now that whole block's full, and one of the weakest blocks now, I think, is the one where the old Pizza Hut and the Yakich and the Portage was. It's hard to walk down that side of the street. So hopefully with some of the things that are happening on that side of the street, there's some better progress on that block as well.
I've wondered if one of the possible uses for the community center might be a conference center that would attract small to medium-sized conferences. If there would be some way the building could.
Yeah, we have an idea for the community center to be a conference center, and what a unique building to put a purpose in that, you know, a purpose like that where it's more keeping it open, so you don't have to frame a bunch of walls and change the use and change the architecture too much would be cool. Well, let's move on to another category of things that Ely's got a good start on, but towns like Ely, I think, could always have more of, and that's art and studios, galleries. We have an idea on the second floor of the Salerno building, which houses the second theater and the concession space. We're considering to build out small studios up there for the community to rent for a couple $100 a month and do their artwork. So how many people, raise your hand if you think there might be a market for art studio space in town? Got a handful. Is anybody ready to sign a lease? All right, we'll talk soon.
Along those same lines, might there be a space for people who would like to rent an industrial kitchen to make whatever product they want to do?
That's a good idea too. I know.
The community center has a kitchen at the bottom floor, so it probably needs a lot of work.
Yeah, the community center has a kitchen. People on Zoom, the idea was more of an industrial space, kitchen space for budding entrepreneurs in the food business. People like Crapola would have been in 2005 when they started their crapola at the farmers market. More small batch, high quality manufacturing would be a great thing in Ely, and something like that could help spin more off. This floor plan is just showing the second floor of the Salerno building with a handful of suites, small spaces that maybe a couple of the rooms could be turned into the gallery portion. And back to Becky's discussion, housing, the city of Ely has, I think they paid for a housing study in 2015 and in 2020. And in both cases, I know in 2020, it was done right before COVID and all the housing supply went off the market. But what the verdict was that Ely can support about 6 new houses per year, I believe. And there's not a lot of new housing going up. I know there's some challenges to building costs, you know, especially now, but even before, and the market value and having a gap there. But that is something that I think rural Minnesota and Ely needs to figure out, and maybe with the help of the community and bright minds like you guys, just keeping that in mind and to brainstorm and send ideas around is always good, because besides having housing for our service workers and you know, there's probably, to grow the town, you're going to need more new housing too. Another idea that people have talked to me about over the years, Elton as well, that people that are living in cabins in the summertime and maybe all year round are, when they get older, they don't want to have to maintain the lake and maybe climb up a ladder or the loft bedroom or things like this. So there's possibly a market to have some more condo style housing in the downtown area, so they can remain in the community with their friends. And how many people do you guys think that there'd be a market for that? That's a pretty good show of hands for all the people on Zoom. one of the sites that we kicked around that idea was the old Ford garage on Conan and First. There's probably enough space to do about 4 units there. And I think this picture I pulled, it's just kind of a loft apartment that had similar windows as Ford garage, but they could be very cool units. I can imagine there'd be some green space in the back and maybe some like common garden area, and try to keep it really unique and honor the history of those buildings, but try to make it more efficiently heated. You know, it's one of the, if you're going to build new and you could maybe build some more affordable units, something like this, I would think would definitely be some more of an expensive project, but you would be able to save a unique architecture gem of in the middle of the town. So I hope there may be a market for both.
There's a question about who is replacing crapola in the James building, and a request for a bowling alley.
Oh, the bowling alley, we need to get that back. So the replacement for crapola, I'll say that we've been talking to a organization to take over that space, but I always let the organization make their own announcement when they're ready. So I wouldn't say that I'm in a position to make an announcement for anybody right now, but there is somebody who's very interested in it. Have you guys seen the new, oh yes, David.
You're talking about the Ford garage as living space. What's nice about that is it has single floor living space, because some of us that want to use it have protect the upstairs and maybe not able to.
For sure. Yes.
Are there still apartments in the top floor of the Tanner building?
The Tanner building is pretty much a shell. There's no electricity, no plumbing, so it's very it's ripe for new everything, which is a good thing, but it's going to be a big project when it happens. Sue's been to the new Ely.org. You guys all need to go to Ely.org. It's got a big facelift in the last few months. Yeah, you have a question?
While you were talking about businesses, you've got a huge outfitter business here, and a lot of people coming through for outfitters. I didn't see any emphasis on how to get that customer base to stay in Ely a little bit longer, things like that. I think that would be a good business area if you could try to attract people coming through to stay longer.
For sure. So we have a gentleman in the audience who says we get so much traffic in the Boundary Waters, people going through outfitters, and what can the community here do to extend their stay so that they stay downtown before or after their trip for even just a few days? That would have a big impact on the retail and the restaurants downtown. So that's a great point. So the new City of Ely website, it's the Tourism Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, and so they are sharing a common website, I think, as they did before, but the new one, I think, is very logical. It's, they have a section for tourism, a section for the Chamber of Commerce, and a section for relocating to Ely. And as ambassadors of this community, this could be a good tool for you guys when you're talking to your friends or people that are interested in Ely. Send them to this place. It's nice that they had the foresight to promote Ely in a way that's more than just visiting, and it's about relocating here too. Ely.org. Oh. Which building? Oh, I didn't mean to say that they're moving to a building. They have a new website. I'm just talking about the new website. Mm-hmm. And of course, office space, what we can do to encourage more people who might have property up here and visit sometimes, or may have been on a Boundary Waters trip, but realize that downtown Ely can be a place where they have a small working space so they can spend more time up here. Maybe that would be the catalyst to let them be able to. And I think COVID really showed that more of that can happen, and Ely can be a big center for remote working. I know a few people that do it. We do lease one office space to a gentleman who does that. And then just so everybody, just a reminder, you guys probably know this already, but Ely has the business park, and there are 2 spots available in the expanded business park 2 area. So some of that more light manufacturing kinds of businesses, you know, let's try to get a couple more and fill those up. The business park is down on, I think it's Miners Drive. You know, goes by the Department of Revenue and Twin Metals and the vet. So.
Just to add on to what Betty said, some of the towns have shared offices where you just have a temporary office in there, where you have set up the Wi-Fi, the computer, and the copiers, the kind of things you would find in an office, and you just rent it for an hour, 2 hours. I'm not really sure what to call that. Not really, not my kind of thing, but it's this new getting economy that people need. These days, just a couple hours.
Co-working space. Yeah, that is we had 10 below in Ely, incredible Ely. They had some space down below the Clune Law Firm, and they, you know, it's sometimes it may be able to be a profitable business model, then sometimes in smaller town, at least to get it started, it may be something that you'd have to subsidize right away. I know there are a few people that are into that concept, and we may see something like that in the future. Yeah, so Northern Grounds, they do hourly rentals of the upstairs. It's sort of I would consider it in that co-working model for sure. There's not a lot of private space yet. It's all open. So I think
They have the infrastructure you would need, like a regular office.
yeah,
Actually, they don't hire a secretary or
they don't have those kind of piece of equipment or resources for staff for that yet, but it could be on the way to having those resources. One of the great things about Ely, and everybody was talking about it for years, there was federal grants to make this happen, and it didn't happen with federal grants, unfortunately, but the city of Ely gets a lot of credit because they made it happen. They invested to put fiber on the telephone poles downtown, and they worked with a company called CTC to lease that infrastructure back. So now the community, all of the business and storefronts downtown can have fiber internet. So a co-working space can have fiber internet, and Ely has had fiber, but it's always been the banks and the hospital and thousands of dollars a month kind of a thing. Now it's affordable for the business community, and that's a big deal. So we have a few offices in the James Drug Building. Actually, they're all being used right now, but you know, for these remote working kinds of things, the co-working is one model. If you have a cabin up here and you like to, you know, have more storage and leave your stuff and have a getaway with fast internet, this is another model that could potentially, you know, these are full right now, so maybe there's a market for more of that as well. And it's right next to the new Pocket Park. So this was a partnership with the city, and we participated, and there was a streetscapes grant from the IRRB as well. So this was kind of phase 1 of it, and the next phase is to add more color and to give it a little bit more character. We'd like to put maybe welcome to Ely sign, or maybe some sort of mural. And one of the centerpiece, the circle in the middle, we had a crazy idea that maybe we would put some sort of old broken bush plane there, or get some playground equipment that looks like a bush plane, because again, to highlight the history and that unique character of what, Ely in the 40s. And I think there's someone in this room, I know at least one person who can fly one of these things. That's Becky. So it'd be really fun, I think, to see kids playing around on those, and get their picture taken, maybe with a sign that says "Welcome to Ely" in the background, and just everybody sharing pictures all over social media these days. So I mentioned the housing study earlier. Possibly you guys had another trivia question, but maybe you guys saw the number. But how many people do you guys think live in the market area of Ely, Minnesota? The trade market area. How many people come to the grocery stores, restaurants? And this is according to a housing study. Close. And this is year round.
You want to know this year round?
The population number according to the housing study. I think David threw out a 10,000 number, and that's pretty close. So he's the chair of the board is going to get a free ticket for the movie theater. But so the market area in 2010 census was 10,330, which is a far cry from the 3,460 that a lot of people talk about. And so when you think about the business park and you think about recruiting friends and people live up here, it's Ely always seemed like a bigger place, but it's there's a map of this area. I mean, there's a pretty far drive, so it's really hard to where do you draw the line? Down in Stony River somewhere, an hour away, or are those people really coming here to go to Zups? But it's the statistics it's an interesting one to follow. And of course, Ely has had downward trends over the years, but this new census, I'm interested to see what that turns out. I don't know if anybody knows where we're at with the 2020 census results in Ely and this market area, but the housing study had estimated that the number would have been increased.
That exclude those people?
I don't know, to be honest. I think there's probably a certain number of months and that you're included, and if you're here for the summer, maybe you're not included. Maybe it depends on where you have your residency, if you're a snowbird or something like that. But those are the kind of things that make these numbers tough. And if the more help we can get to get a good understanding of what these numbers mean, I think would help in the business recruitment. And so this is about as good as I could find as far as a real market analysis done by Maxfield Research. So I'm going to wrap up here in a second, but for all the people in the room, like I said, you guys are the ambassadors. So here's just a small list of some talking points about downtown Ely on the move. We have all these trails that are bringing people downtown to either the restaurants, big investments being put into the Prospectors ATV loop, the Mesabi Trail. According to the city manager, it's about 1 year from now, most of the paths are going to be done. You guys might know more, but it's been a long time coming, and that's going to be a big impact.
Maybe if all these things are done, it'll happen, but we need something that will attract young families to Ely. I mean, the high school graduation classes are now down to 40 or even lower, and historically, they used to be over 120.
Definitely the family is the core of the community, and you know, it keeps the median income up, and you have working people, and so that is a big thing. And daycare was mentioned before, and that's a big need. Daycare is a tough one because the state has some regulations that make it very expensive to start a real daycare. But there are some grants, at least there were about a year or two ago, to help with that. And so if that would be a big business, or a big need in our community for someone to start that business. So, you know, besides those two trails, there's also Hidden Valley, and they've got tons of new mountain biking trails. And I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but it's kind of fun to see all this stuff, just bullet after bullet, and all the great things that have happened recently in this town. Vacancy, I'd say, is on the decline. You know, there's been quite a number of businesses that are selling. You know, there's still a lot on the market, but when you think about just a few years ago, you had Sir G's, and this year you had Motel Ely, and you know, the list goes on and on about activity. And business transactions is a sign of a healthy business community, and the more of that, the better we'll be. It also brings, you know, new blood and new ideas. And so commercial investments, Zups, I think they're investing something like $7 million. The Boathouse, they did an exterior renovation. They're doing a big second floor renovation. Serena's, they did a window project. Music Outfitters is now 2 Airbnbs. Ely Liquor is doing a big investment in taking over the Family Dollar. Domino's Pizza thought Ely would be a great community for them to put a store. Grand Ely Lodge, I know it was a couple years ago, but they redid a lot of ceilings, floors, and finishes, and it was really nice. And of course, Crapola / Brainstorm Bakery, they're filling up a new building. So there's a lot going on. And when you kind of put in perspective and make a list, I just did this 30 minutes ago, or before this presentation started, sitting down and thinking off the top of my head, and I'm sure there's more. Anecdotally, driving around town, there's people painting houses, there's people siding houses, new windows going in houses, and that's great to see. I don't have hard numbers for you on that, but it's happening in our community. The school, I think, is a $20 million project. That's a lot of money pumping into the community. And the hospital, I think they're still planning, and perhaps that project's on hold at the moment, but I believe they still have a passion to invest in the hospital in town. And we touched on it before, but the Ely.org website, you know, there was some, I think, money well spent to create a joint marketing with the city of Ely and some of the tourism bureau and the chamber to come together. And of course, one thing I didn't mention yet, but I thought I'd put it here towards the end, is that we still have this great community college that has 600-700 students, and you know, I think they're a big part of the economy here. Can't forget about them, and always try to remember ways to include them and to make their experience in Ely better. And of course, the Ely Folk School. Every time I talk at Tuesday Group, I want to give them a quick plug. So I went through their schedule and saw just a handful of classes that are coming up: the bent willow, furniture, wild rice harvesting, mushroom foraging, watercolors, forge, making some tools at the forge at the folk school. So tons of stuff going on in the community. Definitely go ahead and take a class at the folk school this summer. We haven't had too many rainy days to sneak downtown for a movie or a folk school class, but hopefully we'll get more. Yes, Elton.
Don't forget, the camps, always forget them. They bring so many young people who need to buy ice cream and football. But even more than that, staff, when they're young, that energetic, can marry each other, move to town and stay.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Bring a lot of talented people, and people spend money.
You betcha. Elton, for the people on Zoom, Elton's talking about the camps, the YMCA camps, Camp the Nord and Widdywagon and Outward Bound, Boy Scouts, Voyager, and everybody's, all those young people that they bring up, a lot of them end up staying and meeting their spouses and living here and having babies. And so those are big economic drivers of Ely as well. So I'll open it up to questions.
So I just, relative to what Elton said, I'm curious about how many people here, because that's where a lot of people through the years say, oh, I came to Campus Busy or Great South Days. I'm curious about how many people in the room first encountered you at Ely because they were into the camp.
We've got a handful of people here for all those people on Zoom. That first interaction with Ely was through one of those camps. Here you go.
We all love what your family has done here. It's amazing. I know your business is based in Columbia, Missouri. Can you tell us a little bit about your family history of the business and what other projects you have going around the country? In a nutshell.
Yes, so for those people on Zoom, Steve Schoen, otherwise known as Shoney, asked a little bit more about our family's business and some other projects that we've done around the country. And so we have only done projects in Columbia, Missouri, and Ely, Minnesota. And in Columbia, we most recently finished an old meat packing plant that's about 9,000 square feet, and there's a Ozark Mountain Biscuit Company moved in, and they're a restaurant and wholesale. They sell to some of the grocery stores frozen biscuits, and so that's one of the more recent projects that we've done down there. And my mom and dad, Vicky and John, they're in back here, but they started this company and with their first project in 2004. So they're going on almost 20 years of doing these kind of projects, and they really instilled the passion for the historic buildings and doing projects with a purpose and kind of supporting entrepreneurs. That all came from their work, and I learned a lot from them. So about 20 years almost doing projects like these, and I think in Columbia we've done maybe a couple dozen projects, and in Ely we're hopefully getting to a dozen pretty soon. So that's sort of the scope